Welcome back to All Again, and in this episode I'm going to be reviewing the album American Idiot by Green Day. But before we get into that, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button as it really helps out my channel, and I'd appreciate if you give the video a like as well. Okay, so let's dive in. Green Day, American Idiot. Released in 2004, it was the 7th studio album by the band. It's their last album following the release of Warning in the year 2000, or their next album should I say. It's phenomenally successful for the band. It's gone on to sell 23 million copies worldwide, and it's gone platinum 8 times in Ireland, 6 times in the UK, 6 times in the US, 6 times in Australia, 4 times platinum in Germany, and 4 times platinum in New Zealand. It got to number 1 in 18 countries all over the world, including the USA, the UK, Ireland, Australia and Canada. Won 2 Grammy Awards, one for Best Rock Album and one for Record of the Year. In terms of the style of this album, like you could probably call it a pop punk album, but to be honest, I think there's a lot more depth to this album than your standard pop punk stuff when you think of bands like Blink-182 or Sum 41. This is different. Like I can't see either of those bands producing an album with the material that's on this. It's fantastic, and it's got so much depth to it. So I think it's more of an alternative rock album. It's also a concept album, so there are some songs on this that are actually very long, tell a story, and the whole album kind of tells a story. So the concept is based around 2 characters. There's Jesus of Suburbia and What's Her Name, and it basically goes through a journey for this character. And there's some fantastic videos on YouTube about that story and what it means. You know, these videos are, half an hour, 40 minutes long. So please go check those out. I'm not going to get into that now. I'm just going to focus solely on the music on this one. But very interesting story about how this album came about. So in terms of the cover, it's a very interesting cover there. It's iconic at this stage. So it is a hand holding a beating heart, which is bleeding, but the heart is in the shape of a grenade, and you can see it's got a pin on top, and it's really a concept. It's Green Day presents American Idiot. So it's really like the band are making a statement with this album. It was produced by Rob Cavallo and Green Day and was released through Reprise Records, and it was recorded at 880 Oakland Ocean Way and Capitol Records in Hollywood. Production on this album is fantastic. Honestly, it's so good. Drums sound massive. There's great layered vocals in it, overdubs, and the guitars are layered. They sound phenomenal. So Rob Cavallo, really hats off to Rob Cavallo. He did a fantastic job producing this album, and I think Green Day, especially Billy, he really wanted to go global with this one. He wasn't leaving anything on the table. So an interesting fact about this: the band, following Warning, which was released in 2000, it wasn't a very successful album, and the band were putting demos together and recording for an album that they were going to call Cigarettes and Valentines. So they had a lot of stuff recorded and mixed and mastered and ready to go on to the next stage, but the master tapes got stolen. So instead of trying to go back and remember what they had recorded in the studio and trying to rehash the album, they decided to start on a blank slate, start from scratch, and just start writing a brand new album. And are we glad they did? I'd love to hear some of the stuff from Cigarettes and Valentines, but like, this album is absolutely fantastic, and I'm glad they started off fresh and came in with new ideas for this one. So the band lineup in this one, it's the Green Day lineup that's been the same lineup since they started way back in the 1990s. It's Billy Joe Armstrong on vocals and guitars, Mike Dirnt on bass and backing vocals, and Trey Cool on bass and backing vocals. In total, this album clocks it in at just over 57 minutes, which for a concept album on CD is probably about right. There's not a bad track on this album, to be honest. You can listen to this the whole way through without skipping any tracks. There's a total of 13 tracks, but 2 of those tracks have 5 parts each. So there's Jesus of Suburbia, which is track number 2. It's got 5 parts, and then you've got Homecoming, which is track number 12, which also has 5 parts. So look, standout tracks for me, I know there's not a track you'd skip on this album, but the standout tracks like American Idiot, Jesus of Suburbia, Holiday, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Give Me Novocaine, Wake Me Up When September Ends, Homecoming, She's a Rebel, We Are the Waiting. Like there's so many class songs in this album. It's just brilliant. So in total, I would give this album a 9 out of 10. I think it's that good that it stands up there with, you know, anything from classic rock or alternative, anything that was coming out in the 90s with the grunge bands, or, you know, any classic rock from the 70s or 80s. I think this album stands up there. And at the time, you know, when it came out, I was, you know, getting into music, and this was a massively influential album to everyone that was interested in rock music and guitar at the time, because rock music and guitar was kind of taking a little bit of a backseat. But when this album came out, along with stuff like you know, the Strokes, the White Stripes, Kings of Leon, early stuff, you know, all that type of stuff really pushed guitar to the forefront. And this album was the, you know, leading the line in terms of aggressive, heavy guitar music that was out at the time that, you know, a lot of pop music was extremely popular. So yeah, I give this a 9 out of 10. I think it's a hugely influential and hugely enjoyable album to listen to. So let me know in the comments what you think of this album, Green Day, American Idiot. I'd love to know if you think it's a stand-up album, or would you prefer other eras from Green Day over this album. Maybe you prefer the 90s stuff. Let me know in the comments what your favourite Green Day album is. So if you enjoyed this video, there's some videos here that you might enjoy, so go check those ones out. Be sure to stay tuned every Wednesday, because I release an alternative rock album review every Wednesday, so stay tuned for that, and there'll be a different album each week. And I also post a new video every day, so stay tuned for that as well. So bye for now, and I'll talk to you on the next one.